Good morning. This is Cynthia A. Johnson with Stand Up Now. Thank you for tuning in to this show. I hope you find this half hour enjoyable and inspiring as we showcase regular people from the city of Detroit who are doing great things and really making a difference in our city, the city of Detroit. Good morning, family. Good morning. This is Cynthia Johnson. You are listening to Stand Up Now on Gospel 1440 WMKM Reborn. And my co-host is none other than Miss Joyce Moore. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you this morning? To the family, good morning also.
I am well. We've got a field-packed show this morning. I want you all to get out your property tax papers so we can go over line by line what they mean. But in the meantime, we have a very special guest that is with us. He's online, a phenomenal brother. His name is Michael Jackman, and he is the managing editor of Metro Times. Mr. Jackman gave recognition to his staff who researched information in regards to the bankruptcy in the city of Detroit. And so he wrote an article a couple of days ago, and it was called, Good Morning, Mr. Jackman.
Hi, Cynthia. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Just fine this morning.
I'm so happy that you're with us, and thank you for taking out some of your time with us this morning. The name of your article, please tell us what it was.
Well, it's 5 things the mainstream media won't tell you about Detroit's bankruptcy.
Why did Metro Times decide, why was it so important for the citizens of Detroit, as a matter of fact, citizens of the state of Michigan, probably in our country, to know that there were at least five things that the media didn't tell us? And briefly tell us what they were.
Well, I think generally it'd be that anyone who was paying attention to the daily papers over the weekend saw this celebration. I don't know what else you can call it. A celebration that this thing that had to happen is gone through successfully, and now we're ready for a city to be reborn. And based on our reporting and the work done by such reporters as Ryan Felton and Kirk Guyette, it seemed an important time to mention that, this never really had to happen in the first place.
Say that.
Point one. Never had to happen in the first place.
You saying?
The bankruptcy itself.
Okay, why? Why didn't it have to happen?
Well, if people who are politically engaged recall that Detroit lowered its income tax rate in an agreement with Lansing, that Lansing would continue to provide revenue sharing from the state to the city to cover the difference, to offset those losses that came with lowering the property taxes. Lansing cut those revenue-sharing payments under Governor Snyder, which left the city in the lurch. So for a lot of people, this is a manufactured crisis. There were also the swap deals that the city made with the banks, which they could have fought in court. But under the bankruptcy proceedings, they were discouraged from doing so. In other words, they knuckled under to what a lot of people view as a criminal enterprise by the big banks. So if these things hadn't gone that way, well, then the city never would have been put to the point where they had to declare bankruptcy. So that's point number one.
Okay. Point number two? Well, let me back up before we
please.
get to point number two. Why do you think that the media chose not to disclose that? And why do you think that the state, probably more important, why would the state do something to sabotage the citizens of Detroit?
Well, I mean, I come from sort of a line of criticism of the powers that be that. I don't want to sound too cynical about it, but they smell money bubbling to the top somewhere, and they know they don't control that money, so they're going to come up with a mechanism to take what they believe is rightfully theirs. They're going to come up with some legal mechanism to step in and make everyone believe that, well, this had to happen. It's tragic, and we're very sorry, but we're just not going to be able to pay the pensioners what they deserve, which is another point. I'm rushing ahead.
That's quite okay. I'm loving this because it is really a confirmation of what personally, so I thought, and so many other people also think. And my guest co-host, we talk about this so often. It's really tragic. When I was listening to the rah-rah and the celebrations this weekend, it almost made me want to throw up. Point number 2.
Well, point number 2 is that, as far as I'm aware, no mainstream media outlet in Metro Detroit acknowledged that the potency of race is a factor in this bankruptcy. We had more than half of the African Americans in the state of Michigan essentially deprived of their rightful democracy.
Oh, my
goodness. That's a staggering statistic when you look at it, and not mentioned in almost any of the coverage from our local news outlets.
And why do you think that happened?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that, for one thing, people are uncomfortable talking about race. I think that maybe there's, a sort of people feel that there's so many people who are going to bully you back when you mention these realities and accuse you of playing some kind of race card. And that may be why people are reluctant to address it. But I noticed that a year and a half ago, Bloomberg News out of New York didn't feel that it was beyond the pale to mention that fact. Also, I think that we're just on a default setting here in the state of Michigan where the larger conversation, I mean, there's a sort of subtle prejudice that, inner city residents, especially black and minority residents, they simply have problems governing themselves. But a lot of outstate people would probably not have a lot of trouble with that narrative when you consider how divided the state is between southeastern Michigan and the outstate areas. Certainly, if Caucasian Michiganders bore the brunt of the selective suspension of democracy, you would hear a lot more about that. So, they've kept that part pretty quiet.
So you've mentioned why it didn't have to happen, why the bankruptcy didn't have to happen. You also have just mentioned that race was a potent factor in enabling the takeover of Michigan cities by emergency managers. Most of these emergency manager law or takeover, or what I call as the emperor taking over these black communities, race, a big part of it was.
Sure, you could, certainly it's offensive, but you could use colonial metaphor to describe it. It's almost like a viceroy being established by the ruler from some distant land called Lansing, stepping in to speak for the natives and ensure that the administration of their little area goes well. And we all know how that's played out in the past. Often doesn't do so well for the people who are being spoken for.
Let me just say for the record, we have to get you back on. I am a fan of Metro Times because Metro Times had the audacity to be honest and give us a forum to have a real discussion about what is going on in the city of Detroit And the fact that the bankruptcy was a manufactured
situation.
Thank you. And it's so very sad that many of the people in the city of Detroit don't even have a clue as to what is going on. And what is really sickening is how there has been so many black people who have been and currently are and continue to be placed in position to make this bankruptcy, this emergency manager law, okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that what we've had here is a good old-fashioned sales job. People want to seem reasonable. They don't want to seem to be arguing from some fringe position. And when the nightly news and the newspapers and the commentators and the politicians all seem to agree that this was tragic and had to happen, well, nobody wants to be that person who's breaking up the party by pointing out some unpleasant truths. It's only natural, and I think that that factors into the way that people have sort of been smoothed over to accept this.
Issues need to be turned up. The fire needs to be sparked under the people, and that in part is what Stand Up Now is all about. Okay, now, number 3, it was preordained and planned as a test case to see if governments could shed pension obligations. Discuss that briefly, please.
Well, when I did this blog post, a number of other people have chimed in with other goals they think that they see were part of this action. But really, if you look at it, Jones Day, the law firm that handled the bankruptcy, was in communication with Governor Snyder back when Governor Snyder said he hadn't decided yet.
Oh.
In fact, you could trace this all the way back to a 2011 article by Jones Day employees about how bankruptcy might help municipalities shed their pension obligations. Now, you look at Michigan. Michigan had the protection of pensions enshrined in its state constitution.
Yes, it did.
It makes a tempting target. If you wanted to do a test case to show that municipalities could shed these pension obligations, why not do the test case in a state where they're so strongly protected? If you could do that, well, then you could do that almost anywhere. So there's so much evidence to this alternative narrative that really hasn't gotten a lot of coverage in the news, even though it was mentioned by Judge Rhodes, one of the presiding judges in this whole case. It was acknowledged by the judge.
I wish we had so much. I wish we had more time, but we're going to get you back on. Okay, point number 4. Democracy is not returning to Detroit. Please explain that.
Well, yeah, sure. The celebration, these celebrations where you read in the newspaper that democracy is returning to Detroit, well, that's not true. The appearance of democracy will return to Detroit. You will have your elections as normal. You will elect leaders, and there will be boards, probably several boards overseeing Detroit, overseeing the city council, overseeing the finances, with essentially veto power to make sure that, if the elected leaders start to make some decisions that are counter to, the spirit of the bankruptcy, well, they're maybe going to have to be overruled. So you're going to have the appearance of democracy, but for at least 13 years, you're going to have an oversight board running the city.
And finally, this whole ordeal would have been impossible without the aid of the mainstream media in Detroit. I want to add to that, without the aid of state legislators. Please address that.
Well, I don't know. We were talking in the office the other day, and I mentioned to someone, do you think that this bankruptcy could have happened if there had never been the strikes at the dailies, if they had never, basically fired all of the people who had a long institutional memory of Michigan politics and Detroit politics, if they hadn't, broken the union and had their way with those papers? And someone said, no, I don't think it could have. I think that, the landscape of today's local media in Detroit is shall we say, timid in the face of power. There used to be something we said in journalism, that journalist's job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Mm.
And I certainly don't see that spirit in most of the coverage from our local media in regards to the bankruptcy.
In your opinion, Michael Jackman, what is our solution?
Well, I think moving forward, probably the best thing to do is to work to open up that debate. I know that there are a lot of people who want to shout down, and call people radicals or conspiracy theorists or fringes. You have a fringe position, but what we forget about a democracy isn't just like two guys get up on stage and people shovel money at them, try to get you to vote for the one brand of the power party that you find most palatable.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have a discussion. We're supposed to elect, I would say, let's start with electing local leaders that we feel we can trust.
Yes.
Educating ourselves about the positions, and let's work on this counter narrative. Maybe I don't have all the facts, but at least we're trying to start some kind of a discussion or debate here that clearly the mainstream media aren't going to foster. So maybe it's things like this, talking on the radio and inviting the comment of people. If anyone has an opinion or wants to share their stories about the changes Detroit is going through, feel free to give me a call at Metro Time.
We thank you so very much. Is there anything that you wanted to chime in with, Joyce? Joyce Moore is my co-host.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Joyce.
Hi. I'm basically just listening because we had talked about this previously and said that if they did not want a bankruptcy, it would not happen. But if they wanted a bankruptcy, it would happen. So, it happened, but now we have to figure out how it's going to benefit the majority of the people in the city of Detroit. That's my position now. What will happen now?
It sounds bleak.
Well, it always looks darkest before the dawn, I guess. This whole idea that people who had a lot of control over the city, and then it failed, and their solution was to have more control. Well, there's something about that just doesn't track.
And may I make a suggestion to Metro Times? It is really past time that we begin a discussion and begin to not talk, not tell, to listen to the voters who don't vote. Because the media is forming our opinions and ideas. And the voters who don't vote.
But then people have to feel that their vote is being counted and counted properly. And that's the big issue also.
Oh, that's a complicated discussion.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
it is.
I've heard some people say, if you don't vote, you can't complain. Then I've heard other people say, I didn't vote, so you can't blame me.
Wow.
But, the most important, I would say the most important elections to watch are those really local ones. If anyone remembers back in the 1980s when, a lot of the really conservative forces started taking over, say, school boards out west, that was where they started. Concentrate on those local officials. Those are the ones who are going to grow and have political careers, and that's where they start. Trust a person. I think district voting in Detroit may be one of the greatest things ever. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to vote for the person who is going to ensure that the streets are paved and policed, and that the fire departments are funded in your neighborhood. I think that's a great development.
Well, I happen to agree with you, but even before we do that, I think that the first thing is that we have to have people who, as you have said before, we can trust, and people who are being honest and forthright to the people.
We don't have that now.
Mr. Jackman, thank you. I hope that we can get you back on.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I'd love to come back on. Thank you, Cynthia.
Oh, you're so welcome. God bless. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Wow, Joyce.
Well, it's a lot of information.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
and we have very short information in regards to the property taxes,
Well,
as I mentioned, we can start with talking about what's on that property.
Okay, hold it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
go,
hold it.
Go.
Because you're moving faster than I am. Okay, now, first of all, let me just give you an update on the $3 million one.
Oh.
Okay, so I went to the meetings that the city of Detroit had required that you go to, and a couple times when I went there, the meetings were not there. Many people were not there. So why that was, I don't know. I went to one over on Woodmere. The city of Detroit requested that, according to this, is district hearings. So I went to District 5, and no, I missed District 5, but I went to Patton over on Woodmere, and no one was there. And I went to a couple of the others, only to find out that people had the same concerns, and the concern for the, for the Community Development Block Grant Funds. And that's the $3 million that I'm concerned about that should not be given as a loan/mortgage from the mayor. And so they're holding public hearings now when those hearings should have been held before a decision was made. But better still than that, the $3 million, let me just say the $3 million, we are adamant about keeping it as a grant as opposed to this new program that the mayor came up with. And the point is that we've contacted some people. Really, I contacted everybody before. But what happens is I contacted everybody by email. Okay, forget email. Email says it goes into a general mailbox. Didn't know that. So now we're going to go back to the good old United States Postal Service. And so I've done a FOIA for the Law Department of the City of Detroit and a FOIA for HUD, the director, to get a response on the proposal and to find out the actual proposal and how it was written and bring it back to the public.
Did you know that a FOIA, when you send for a FOIA,
it's Freedom of Information Act.
They are supposed to respond to you within 5 days?
Absolutely, and if they don't, then you start the next proceedings. Right, exactly.
That's right.
I got. Believe me, I've done enough FOIAs. But so we're going to start there first, actually, and then, like I said, the name was Melvin Hollowell, of the director of. He was the director of the Law Department, and the other person was, let me give that name, Helen Kenovatsky. She's a deputy secretary of HUD. Now the point is this: somebody made a very point earlier. People don't want to see their names. We need to talk about what people we put in charge.
That's right.
To make them accountable for responding to us. I want a response. I'm not taking my time to do this, to do that. So anyway, that's the $3 million. We'll talk about that one again.
That's interesting. I just want to touch on that just for when you talk about people don't want to use names. We want to be general. We don't want to call anyone out if that's what people want to call it. But the only way that we can keep people or make people accountable is that we have to use names.
Right.
Otherwise, what is to make a person accountable?
Okay, so when I went to Crowell, we may not get to taxes today. But anyway, when I went to Crowell Center,
we'll do that on Thursday.
Okay, people were there and very astute. Wanted to know why. I talked to Ms. Harding, who gave me the name of several people that I've contacted. As a matter of fact, I contacted John Conyers, Congressman John Conyers' office. I'm waiting for a response, but they're going to do an inquiry, and that's a good thing because of the fact that people have made the same assessment that I have, and that assessment is very simple.
Who did you speak with over at Congressman John Conyers' office?
I got her name written down at home. Nice lady. I've forgotten her name. But I have her name written down at home, believe me, the time and the response. And I'm going to draft a letter to that effect today. As a matter of fact, these
family, did you hear that? Okay, well, so when you speak with someone, you want their name, you want their title, you want the date, and you want their supervisor.
Right. And that's another thing, too. Believe me, in my letter, I've got, I even drafted part of the FOIA to indicate that the person that I talked to did not want me to get the person over them because I usually start at the top, come down. Most people say, what is it, protocol? You start at the bottom and move up. I start at the top and come down. I like that better because the top guys, once they allocate and say, look, I want the results, they usually will give the results that we need.
Again, keeping our officials accountable. And we only have 2 minutes.
Wow.
Okay.
But anyway, so we'll talk about taxes another time. But let me just get this out. So the whole point is that we've done the FOIA. That's a good. And then we're going to continuously, the fact that they're going to do an inquiry into why and how he can make it, because she was surprised.
Who's he?
Dugan. Is it
Duggan?
Duggan.
Mayor Duggan.
Well, I keep calling him Dugan. You know why? Because he's duking us. He really is. So, and that's how I feel at this point. At first, I was very respectful, say Mayor Duggan, but I feel that he's really duking the people in the city of Detroit. And so with that, especially when you tell me $3 million that I know are going to help people with roofs, windows, porches, electrical, plumbing, and help. Because at the meeting, even at the meeting at Crowell, the lady says, I need all that. And if he thinks he's going to just bring in and make it a loan where I can't get it. So we're revving people up. The interest is there. And so that's what I want. We've got to get the people's interest, and after that, then we got to organize. We have got to organize these groups, and I think dynamically, the more people are interested, the better. Okay, Cynthia.
Wow, we have. If you want to help out Stand Up Now to be on WMKM more than just a half hour, please don't hesitate to give us a call. You can give me a call direct, 313-728-5211. Make a check or money order payable to Stand Up Now, or you can make it payable to Gospel 1440 WMKM. We definitely need your help. God bless you. We don't have enough time. Half hour is not long enough. We would really appreciate your support. Thank you, Michael Jackman of Metro Times. And of course, thank you to you, the family, and my girl, co-host Joyce Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you all. We're all